My family is pressuring me to give my sister my wedding venue because she needs it more and is pregnant. When my sister turned to me at the barbecue and asked, "Can we just use your venue instead?" I felt the air go out of my lungs. I should have been celebrating our engagement, 3 years of dreaming, 8 years of love, and the perfect venue secured since my graduation day. But instead, I was frozen, caught off guard by her earnest plea and the expectant smiles all around. I remember the first time I set foot in that garden. It was a warm afternoon 3 years ago, sunlight filtering through the magnolias, petals drifting like confetti over the stone path. My fiancé and I fell silent when we walked past the arbor covered in wisteria. We whispered plans to each other, heartbeats in harmony, promising ourselves that this slice of paradise would be ours on the happiest day of our lives. When we learned the only available slot was September 10th, exactly after my graduation, we didn't hesitate. We booked it on the spot and carried that excitement through 3 years of thesis deadlines and vendor scouting. So when my sister announced her pregnancy in front of everyone, complete with the dramatic flair she reserves for every life update, I should have been happy for her. And I was, in a way. But the moment she turned her gaze on me, asked to kinda take your venue, the sinking realization hit that my dreams could be repackaged as charity. I wanted to say no before the words even formed, but a crease of guilt had already wriggled into my stomach. My fiancé squeezed my hand under the picnic table. I could see the conflict in his eyes, his support battling his frustration. He mouthed, "You don't have to." But the silent accusation in the expectant faces around us weighed heavier than any cheer I'd ever known. My grandmother, with her gentle wrinkles, looked at me like I was the only obstacle between my sister and happiness. I swallowed back the tremor in my voice and managed, "It's a bit complicated." My sister's brow furrowed. "Complicated? You've had this booked for 3 years," she said, voice tight. "When have you ever let me down?" In that moment, I heard my mother's voice ring out. "You waited 3 years. Could it have killed you to wait a few more months?" The words landed like bricks. My sister burst into tears and fled the yard, accusing me of selfishness as she went. For a heartbeat, I considered chasing after her. But the sight of my fiancé stepping between us kept me rooted. Later, in the car, my fiancé's jaw clenched so hard I feared he'd swallow his own anger. "They're ruining this for us," he said, voice low. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. He touched my face gently and promised, "No matter what, we'll figure this out together." And for the first time that evening, relief flickered through me, a reminder that our wedding was about us, not about placating everyone else. That night, my sister called, voice raw. She accused me of always getting what I wanted, of ruining her wedding before it even has a chance. My father texted me 5 times with variations of, "Hope you're happy. Your sister hasn't stopped crying." I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every birthday she ever outacted me on, every time I cleaned up her mess. I should have known this would snowball. I'd carried her drama since childhood, waiting for a day when I could stand up for myself. When she hung up, I let out a sob, half heartbreak over my family's betrayal, half relief that the dam had broken. Over the next days, the family line fractured further. My brother, living miles away, reached out after hearing my parents' one-sided version. "They didn't tell you everything," he said. His empathy was a balm, but it highlighted how thoroughly my parents sided with her. I spent hours researching boutique hotels offering last-minute weddings so she'd have alternatives, and secretly laughed at the irony of planning another backup plan on top of my own. By the time my sister unblocked me, frantic texts from her wedding planner in hand, I felt a strange calm. She had rebooked the venue under her name for 9 a.m. the next morning, extra fees included. My chest tightened. This wasn't just about a plot of land anymore. It was about boundaries I'd never set, about being expected to serve her whims. I typed out a message filled with the hurt I'd held in for years. The shared birthdays, the ruined graduation, the endless favors that never came back. When I sent it, I braced for fireworks. But instead, a single "aw" popped up on my screen, followed by silence. I realized I was no longer available to be her doormat. It was the first time I felt powerful in this mess. Powerful enough to choose my own peace. Late that afternoon, my wedding planner called with reassuring news. No changes could be made without me there in person. I exhaled so hard I felt dizzy. Security measures were set, passwords changed, catering adjusted. For now, our dream remained ours. Tonight, I'll drift to sleep knowing the fight has only begun. But I found my voice at last. I woke up the next morning to the sun slanting through the curtains, the hum of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. My heart pounded as I read the string of messages. Venue rebooking confirmed. See you at 9. And worst of all, photos of the new contract with my sister's name stamped in bold. It felt like someone had shoved a fist into my chest. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then threw the phone across the bed and buried my face in the pillows. My fiancé stirred beside me, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What happened?" he asked, voice gentle. I muttered the gist, and his face turned stone. He pulled me close, one arm around my shoulders, the other gripping my hand. "We'll stop this," he said. "I promise." His certainty was the only thing keeping me anchored. We drove to the venue together, a silent convoy of 2 SUVs winding down country roads. My stomach churned as we approached the wrought iron gates. The security guard nodded to our planner, who met us at the entrance with a sympathetic smile. "They tried to switch the booking," she explained quietly, "but the contract requires both signatures in person." Relief and fury crashed over me in equal measure. I realized then how little my family had actually read the fine print. They assumed because we booked it early, it could be handed off without consequences. As we walked the grounds, the air smelled of jasmine and damp earth. I could almost hear the laughter and clinking glasses I'd imagined for months. I closed my eyes and breathed it in, letting the memory of that first afternoon ground me. My fiancé slipped his hand into mine, and together we rehearsed how we would tell my parents and my sister, calmly but firmly, that this venue was off limits. That evening, my parents called, their voices trembling with indignation. My mother barked about being betrayed. My father threatened to teach me a lesson in gratitude. I listened without interrupting, letting their anger tumble out. When they paused to catch their breath, I answered, voice steady. "You've had your chance to help," I said. "You chose to gang up on me instead. We're not giving up our wedding plans for anyone." My mother's gasp was almost physical. I ended the call before the tirade could resume. My sister texted next, begging me to reconsider, to remember how much she loved me. Her words twisted in my mind. Loving me meant taking what I'd worked so hard for? I tapped out a reply that felt like glass shards under my fingertips. I love you, but I love our wedding too. I added that I hoped she found peace, then hit send. I felt tears sting, but I no longer craved their approval. Over the following days, the tension with my family was a constant undercurrent. I fielded guilt trips via group texts, endured passive-aggressive comments at work lunches, and navigated awkward silences when our extended clan passed me at church. But with every confrontation, I felt stronger. I realized that my wedding wasn't just a ceremony. It was a declaration of who I was and who I chose to be, unfiltered by anyone else's demands. My fiancé and I threw ourselves into the final preparations. We met with the florist to choose dahlias and eucalyptus instead of peonies, still beautiful but less expensive, and called in favors for the string quartet. Our friends rallied in ways that made me choke up. An old college roommate offered to bake the cake, a coworker volunteered to DJ, and my brother drove in to help hang lanterns. Their enthusiasm was a buoy, reminding me that family could be chosen as well as born. The day before the wedding, my sister showed up unannounced at our rehearsal dinner, eyes puffy from crying. She stood in the doorway, clutching a bouquet someone had thrust into her hand. For a heartbeat, I felt everything unravel. But then I saw her hands tremble, her brimming remorse, and I remembered all the times I'd let her back in after she stomped off in a huff. I waved her over, my own hands shaking. "I don't want a scene," I whispered, and she nodded, stepping forward as if crossing a fault line. She apologized, soft, sincere words, carrying the weight of days of regret. She said she'd been terrified of becoming a mom and had lashed out in panic. She admitted she'd never paused to think about how much this meant to me. Tears slid down her cheeks, and I felt my anger dissolve into something gentler. Compassion tangled with hurt. I reached out, touched her arm, and said, "I forgive you, but please don't ever try that again." On our wedding day, I stood behind the curtain in a lace dress that felt like a second skin. My heart pounded like a drum solo as I watched my fiancé stride toward me under the arch of wisteria. The guests, friends, allies, and yes, a few wary family members fell silent. When our eyes met, everything else faded. In that moment, every argument, every betrayal, every tear was worth it for the promise we made to protect our joy, to honor our story, and to begin our life together on our own terms. As he took my hand and the music swelled, I knew this was exactly where I belonged. Days after the wedding, felt suspended in a dream. Our house was quiet for the first time in months. No vendor knockings, no group chats blowing up with menu debates, no tugs on my sleeve demanding details. My fiancé and I spent a Sunday morning in pajamas on the couch, sipping cafe lattes and replaying snippets on our phones. The way the sunlight caught the lace on my train, the tear in my sister's eye when she handed me the bouquet. The look on my grandmother's face as she whispered, "I'm proud of you." Each memory felt like a blessing stitched into the fabric of our story. Not everyone had come. My parents arrived late, faces drawn, shoulders tight, but they arrived. My sister, presented at the reception as my honorary maid of honor, moved through the crowd with grace I almost didn't recognize. She wove between tables, greeting my friends with a genuine smile that warmed me to the core. When I caught her eye, she mouthed, "I'm sorry," and I nodded. In that silent exchange, I felt layers of our past slip away, replaced by something new, understanding. That night, after the last song faded and guests piled into Ubers, we collapsed onto the floral-strewn dance floor. My dress was scuffed with grass stains. His tux jacket smelled faintly of cologne and sweat. We laughed at how we tripped over each other during our first dance, how my aunt nearly face-planted into the cake. Under the marquee lights, I realized that perfection had never been the goal. Connection was, and we had it in spades. In the weeks that followed, the aftermath settled into our everyday life. The florist replaced the centerpieces in our living room, their petals drying into keepsakes. The planner sent a final invoice we paid with a sense of closure. And my family? Well, our dynamics shifted. My mother called one evening, voice softer than I'd heard in years. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "We were so worried about everyone being happy that we forgot about the one person who mattered most." I told her I loved her, but I needed time. We agreed to start fresh. Small dinners, honest conversations, no pressure. My sister and I text twice a week, sharing photos of nursery designs and honeymoon snapshots. We joke that next time she needs something big, she should just ask for kitten videos instead of my wedding resources. Her laughter emoji in response felt like a treaty signed. Sitting at my desk one morning, I caught sight of a faded RSVP from the cousin who'd boycotted the event. On impulse, I dialed her number. "I'm sending you a copy of the wedding video," I said. She hesitated, then choked out, "I want to see it." When she laughed at my impromptu toast and teared up during our vows, I realized this story, our story, wasn't just for me. It belonged to everyone willing to witness it honestly. I still think about that barbecue when it all began. The heat of the grill, the scent of charcoal, the hush that fell when my sister made her ask. At the time, it felt like an avalanche, sweeping me off the path I'd been carving for years. But now I see that moment as the turning point. A test I might have failed had I not found my voice. Choosing our wedding over my family's demands didn't break us, it redefined us. Every time I pass through that venue gate now, I remember the wisteria-draped arbor, the petals drifting like confetti, and the promise we made to each other. I think about how love isn't passive. It's fiercely defended, negotiated with boundaries, and celebrated on one's own terms. And while I hope I never have to fight that hard again, I know I would. For this love, this story, every messy, beautiful moment of it. And now, as I settle into married life, I carry that barbecue moment with me, a reminder that sometimes love demands a little courage and a firm no before it can truly flourish. I see my sister's nursery sketches taped to her walls and remember the days we spent texting late into the night, laughing about how far we'd come. I walk past our wedding venue on weekends, nodding at the security guard who still remembers our codes, and feel a quiet pride. My fiancé and I have unpacked the last of the RSVPs, and I filed away the contract photocopies. Our future is no longer inked on paper somewhere else, but alive in every good morning text, every shared latte, and every plan we sketch out together. Our story isn't over. It's only just beginning, written in the small moments that follow the big dramatic ones. And though I know this world will keep testing boundaries, I take comfort in the strength I found in saying, "This is ours," and in the love that met me when I finally stood up for myself.